Evander Holyfield wasn't just a heavyweight champion. He was a four-time title holder who beat Mike Tyson twice and survived wars that would have ended most careers. But behind the glory, there were warnings he ignored and damage he couldn't outrun.
It bothered me, because, I'm like, and everybody looking at me and say, oh man, he gonna kill Holyfield.
Now, boxing legends are finally revealing the truth about the fights, the fouls, and the physical toll, and why they believe his own choices sealed his fate. The Tyson Wars and the headbutt accusations. The title of the only boxer to beat Mike Tyson twice comes with a price. That price, according to Tyson himself, was paid in blood from cuts opened by what he claims were intentional headbutts. The rivalry between Tyson and Holyfield remains one of the most controversial in boxing history, and at its center sits an accusation that paints Holyfield not as a clean warrior, but as a dirty fighter who pushed the boundaries of fair play. The first fight happened on November 9th, 1996, at the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas. The bout was billed as finally because fans had waited years for these two to meet. Tyson entered as the WBA heavyweight champion. Holyfield was considered past his prime. The odds were 5-1 against him. When asked about those odds, Holyfield had a simple response.
The odds never made any difference to me because the odds don't fight.
The fight itself was brutal. In the second round, a clash of heads opened a cut over Tyson's right eye. Blood poured down his face. Tyson later claimed in interviews that Holyfield targeted this vulnerability repeatedly, suggesting it was a calculated move to wear him down. Referee Mitch Halpern warned both fighters about rough tactics, but deducted no points. Holyfield won by 11th round technical knockout. He became the first person since Muhammad Ali to win a heavyweight championship 3 times. But Tyson was not satisfied with the outcome. He began telling anyone who would listen that Holyfield had cheated. The rematch came on June 28, 1997. This one was dubbed The Sound and the Fury. From the opening bell, the fight devolved into a brawl. Multiple clinches, multiple warnings from referee Mills Lane, and once again, Tyson suffered a cut over his right eye from a head clash in the second round.
He butted me in the first round, but then he butted me again in the second round. Then as soon as he butted me, I watched him. He had me holding, and he looked right at me, and I saw him, and he was going for it, and he kept going for it, and he butted me again. He kept going down and coming up, and he charged into me. And no one warned him, no one took any points for him. What am I to do? This is my career.
Tyson's frustration boiled over in the third round. After spitting out his mouthpiece, he bit Holyfield's right ear, tearing off a chunk and spitting it onto the canvas. The fight was paused. A point was deducted. The fight resumed. Then, Tyson bit Holyfield's left ear. Lane disqualified him. In the post-fight chaos, Tyson explained his actions by pointing directly at Holyfield's alleged fouls.
I got children to raise, and this guy keeps butting me, trying to cut me and get me stopped on cut. I gotta retaliate.
Years later, Tyson was asked if he would do it again. His answer was blunt.
No, yeah, I probably would do the same thing, because he was really kicking.
Holyfield has always maintained that any head contact was unintentional, a byproduct of his forward-pressing style. When asked about Tyson's accusations, he turned the accusation around.
He knows he intentionally headbutted me because I was intentionally headbutting him.
Right.
You know what I mean? He could have said, yeah, I was headbutting Mike because Mike was headbutting me, but he never said that.
The aftermath of the bite fight created lasting consequences for both men. The Nevada State Athletic Commission suspended Tyson for over a year and fined him $3 million, which was 10% of his purse. No formal action was taken against Holyfield, which reinforced Tyson's narrative of bias. Even George Foreman, who had his own brutal encounter with Holyfield, acknowledged the danger Tyson represented in the ring. When asked about potentially fighting Tyson, Foreman gave a characteristically honest assessment.
I call him Mike Nightmare Tyson. That guy was a nightmare in the ring. I mean, really, if he missed you with his left, then missed you with his right, he'd bite you. I didn't want to have anything to do with that guy.
You didn't want him?
No, I didn't want him.
The irony is that Tyson and Holyfield eventually reconciled. They even went into business together, selling cannabis-infused edibles shaped like ears with a bite taken out of them. The product was called Holy Ears, or Mike Bites.
There it goes right there, the ear. And they were going off the hook, and he was a little offended. He was a little offended at first, and the whole time, why you doing this to me, man? He was a little offended until he saw the profit of it. He saw that profit. Hey, I'm with you.
But the accusations of intentional headbutting never fully disappeared. Michael Jai White publicly agreed in a 2020 interview that Holyfield's headbutts appeared intentional and that he was a dirty fighter. The debate about whether Holyfield crossed the line from aggressive to dangerous continued for decades. The Tyson fights cemented Holyfield's legacy as a warrior who would do anything to win. They also planted the seeds for the argument that his fighting style put his opponents in danger, but Holyfield was putting himself in danger too. Every headbutt, every punch absorbed, every round fought was adding up, and the next legend to face him would be the first to publicly warn about where all that damage might lead. George Foreman's warning about the accumulated damage. George Foreman hit Evander Holyfield harder than anyone ever had. Holyfield went back to his corner and asked if all his teeth were still there. That single punch, a looping right hand that came down between Holyfield's guard, became a defining moment in Holyfield's career. It also became the foundation for Foreman's warnings about the dangers of fighting for too long. The fight took place on April 19, 1991, at Trump Plaza in Atlantic City. It was billed as the Battle of the Ages. Holyfield was 28 years old and the undisputed heavyweight champion holding the WBA, WBC, and IBF belts. Foreman was 42 on a comeback that had produced a 24-0 record with 23 knockouts. Holyfield weighed 208 pounds. Foreman weighed 257 pounds. The size difference was staggering. Almost 50 pounds separated the two men. But Holyfield had a plan. He believed Foreman's power could be neutralized through superior speed and conditioning.
You know, George Foreman, the only way he promoted his strength. His strength was his everything.
Yeah.
And like this, and so, you know, and so he pulling the big old truck on his shoulders and all this and stuff like that. And so, you know, I had people talking about, well, he did this, he did that. I said, look, hey, I said, boxing is not all box strength. I said, no. I said, he got to try to hit me. I said, he's slow as Christmas. I said, he's slow as Christmas. I said, you know, he's not fast.
Holyfield underestimated Foreman's timing. The older fighter had developed an uncanny ability to predict when his opponent would move back into range. Holyfield would pull away from a punch, but by the time he returned to position, Foreman's fist would be waiting for him.
I said, you know, so he throw these big shots. But the difference is that he got good timing. And so that's what I realized, because I pulled back, and by the time I pulled back from the shot ain't got done yet. Bam! I bring my head back because that's how slow he is. His timing, but he got right time. He know that you gonna come back at the right time when because he's supposed to be gonna miss me, and I come back.
Bam.
When I come back, it's coming. Oh.
Then came the punch that changed everything. Holyfield described it years later with the kind of clarity that only comes from trauma.
Well, yeah, you said the hardest you've ever been hit in your life was by George Foreman. Yep. You actually went back to the ring and asked your corner if all your teeth were still there.
Yeah. I mean, it was, man, you know, to get hit, and, you know, and I asked him, I said, what did he hit me with? I'm like, all I know, I got cracked, and I go, what did he hit me with? He said, he'll hit you with a looping right. And so, you know, a looping right means you don't see it because he threw it wide and they come down, bam, like this. So my hands are up and they come between them, bam, like this. So I didn't see it. So
Holyfield survived. He went on to win by unanimous decision after 12 grueling rounds. But Foreman walked away from that fight with a deep respect for Holyfield's heart and a deep concern for his future. Foreman later described Holyfield's fighting spirit with a vivid analogy. No one ever had as much heart. You hurt him, you get 15 shots back, like waking a tiger. This description captured both the glory and the danger of Holyfield's approach. He was not a defensive fighter. He was a counterpuncher who absorbed damage in order to deliver it back with compound compound interest. The problem was that Holyfield kept fighting and fighting and fighting. By 2002, when Holyfield was preparing to fight at age 40, Foreman expressed serious concern in an ESPN interview. He pointed out that Holyfield, as an undersized heavyweight, had absorbed tremendous punishment across 18 years and 45 fights, including brutal wars against Riddick Bowe, Lennox Lewis, and Mike Tyson. Even when he won some fights, people beat him up, Foreman observed. He contrasted Holyfield's approach with his own comeback strategy of selective matchmaking and giving beatings rather than receiving them after a long layoff. Foreman understood something fundamental about heavyweight boxing that Holyfield seemed unwilling to accept. The division was unique in its capacity for destruction. The punches landed by 200-pound men could cause damage that accumulated invisibly over years before manifesting in catastrophic ways. Foreman voiced concern for Holyfield's future well-being, hoping he could retire and be around as a grandfather. But Holyfield did not listen. He kept fighting until 2011, when he was 48 years old, and then, impossibly, he returned for an exhibition in 2021 at the age of 58. By then, the accumulated damage that Foreman had warned about was becoming visible to everyone who watched him move. The 1991 fight between Foreman and Holyfield represented a crossroads. Foreman chose to walk away from boxing eventually, preserving his health and his legacy. Holyfield chose to keep fighting, chasing titles and paydays and the roar of the crowd. That choice, more than any single punch, is what boxing legends believe will ultimately kill him. The heart condition that should have ended everything. In 1994, Evander Holyfield's body sent him a message. His heart was failing. Doctors told him to stop fighting or risk dying in the ring. He claimed God healed him and kept fighting for another 17 years. The trouble started during his April 22, 1994 fight against Michael Moorer at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas. Holyfield entered as the undisputed heavyweight champion, holding the WBA, WBC, and IBF belts. Moorer was a southpaw and former light heavyweight champion. He was supposed to be a routine defense. From the opening bell, something was wrong. Holyfield appeared uncharacteristically sluggish, lacking his usual speed and stamina. He was dropped in the second round by a straight left from Moorer. It was the first knockdown of his professional career. He struggled through 12 rounds and lost by unanimous decision. After the fight, Holyfield was admitted to Valley Hospital in Las Vegas. Routine tests revealed abnormalities in his heart function. Doctors observed that his lungs had filled with fluid, a sign that his heart was not pumping effectively. The diagnosis came 4 days later. Holyfield had a congenital heart condition known as non-compliant left ventricle, where the left ventricle fails to relax properly after contracting, impairing blood flow and oxygen delivery to the body. This stiff heart syndrome was linked to severe fatigue and explained his lethargy against Moorer. Further tests revealed additional complications, a tiny hole between the heart's chambers and possible kidney strain from dehydration. The condition was described as non-life-threatening under normal circumstances, but highly risky for a professional boxer, where intense cardiovascular stress could lead to heart failure during a fight. On April 26, 1994, Holyfield announced his retirement from boxing at a press conference in Atlanta. He was 31 years old with a record of 30-2. The medical establishment and the boxing world assumed his career was over. Then came the televangelist. Holyfield claimed that during a visit with Benny Hinn, he experienced a miraculous faith-based healing. During a prayer session, he felt a warm sensation in his chest, which he believed cured his heart ailment. Subsequent medical tests showed improved heart function, with the left ventricle appearing compliant and the small hole reportedly closed or insignificant. Skeptics questioned whether the original diagnosis was accurate or if natural recovery played a role. But Holyfield passed all required athletic commission exams, and in May 1995, he returned to the ring. The comeback was spectacular. He defeated Ray Mercer. He reclaimed titles against Riddick Bowe. He upset Mike Tyson in 1996 and retained the belt in the infamous 1997 rematch. Holyfield has consistently credited divine intervention, stating in interviews that God healed me. But the medical reality of what happened in that ring against Moorer never truly went away. Holyfield himself recalled feeling unusually tired during the fight, as if his body was shutting down, but he pushed through out of warrior instinct. The fact that he had been fighting for years with an undetected congenital heart condition raised questions about the adequacy of athletic screenings for hidden conditions. The heart episode became a pivotal chapter in the narrative of Holyfield's career. For believers, it was proof of God's power and Holyfield's faith. For skeptics, it was proof of Holyfield's denial and the boxing establishment's willingness to let fighters risk their lives for money. What is undeniable is that Holyfield continued fighting for another 17 years after being told his heart could kill him. He fought until he was 48 years old, and then he came back for an exhibition at 58. Every punch he absorbed during those years was a gamble against a heart that had already shown signs of failure. The 1994 heart condition should have been the end. Instead, it became just another obstacle that Holyfield refused to let stop him. That refusal is what boxing legends point to when they say he is fighting a battle he cannot win. The heart may have been healed, or it may have been given a temporary reprieve. Either way, the accumulated stress of decades of heavyweight combat has placed demands on that organ that no amount of faith can fully address. The physical decline and CTE concerns. By the 2000s, the Evander Holyfield who had beaten Mike Tyson and George Foreman was disappearing. In his place was a slower, more hittable version who absorbed punishment that a younger Holyfield would have avoided. The decline was visible to everyone except the man himself. From 2000 to his official retirement in 2011, Holyfield's record was a mixed 9-7-1. The losses came against fighters like Chris Bird, James Toney, and Sultan Ibragimov. These were quality opponents, but they were not the caliber of fighters Holyfield had defeated in his prime. The problem was that prime was gone. In his 2003 ninth-round TKO loss to James Toney, Holyfield appeared gassed early, unable to sustain his output against a fresher opponent. His legendary stamina had abandoned him. The relentless pressure that had overwhelmed George Foreman was nowhere to be found. Injuries compounded the decline. After his December 2002 unanimous decision loss to Chris Bird, Holyfield was diagnosed with a torn rotator cuff that required surgery. The shoulder issue had plagued him intermittently, affecting his punching power and defensive maneuvers. An MRI confirmed an acute tear of the supraspinatus tendon, one of the key components of the rotator cuff. By the mid-2000s, some athletic commissions were denying Holyfield fight licenses due to concerns over his physical state. The New York State Athletic Commission banned him from boxing due to diminished skills. Holyfield simply found other jurisdictions willing to sanction his fights, but the most alarming aspect of his late career persistence was the mounting concern over chronic traumatic encephalopathy, the degenerative brain disease caused by repeated concussive impacts. Holyfield, who absorbed thousands of heavy blows over decades, began showing potential signs in the 2000s, including noticeably slurred speech in interviews and public appearances. In a 2015 discussion on head trauma, Holyfield spoke candidly about the perils of boxing, admitting awareness of brain injury risks, but emphasizing protective measures like headgear in sparring. Experts and fans drew parallels to Muhammad Ali, who suffered from Parkinson's syndrome linked to CTE. Holyfield's wars with heavy hitters, the Bow trilogy, the Tyson bouts, the Foreman fight, had likely contributed to cumulative trauma. Then came the exhibition that proved everyone's fears were justified. On September 11, 2021, at age 58, Holyfield stepped into the ring against MMA veteran Vitor Belfort for a Triller Fight Club event in Hollywood, Florida. Pre-fight footage from open workouts had already alarmed viewers. Holyfield moved sluggishly, his reflexes dulled, his form a shadow of its former precision. The fight lasted 109 seconds. Belfort, who was 44 and had limited boxing experience, dropped Holyfield twice with overhand rights before the referee stopped it as a first-round TKO. Holyfield looked unsteady from the opening bell. His legs betrayed him. His defense was porous. Belfort landed clean shots effortlessly. The Florida State Boxing Commission issued a 30-day medical suspension following the bout, citing the need for neurological clearance amid concerns over head trauma. The event drew widespread criticism as a preventable fiasco that exploited an aging legend for spectacle. Holyfield earned a reported $5 million for the fight. The money was necessary because of the financial collapse that had consumed his fortune, but the cost of that paycheck was measured in brain cells that could never be replaced. The Belfort loss was not an anomaly. It was the logical endpoint of a career extended far beyond its natural limits. Every year, Holyfield continued fighting added to the neurological debt he was accumulating. And unlike financial debt, neurological damage cannot be discharged through bankruptcy or paid off through future earnings. Boxing legends who watched Holyfield's decline understood what they were seeing. They had seen it before in other fighters who could not walk away. The slurred speech, the slower reactions, the inability to protect oneself from incoming fire. These were the symptoms of a brain that had absorbed too much punishment over too many years. CTE can only be confirmed posthumously through autopsy, but the living symptoms, memory loss, mood swings, cognitive decline, are warning signs that something has gone wrong. Those who care about Holyfield have watched these signs emerge and wondered how much longer his body can sustain the damage already done. The financial ruin and family obligations that drove him to keep fighting. The four-time heavyweight champion of the world earned somewhere between $200 and $250 million over his career. By 2012, he was bankrupt, facing foreclosure on his mansion and risking jail time for unpaid child support. The financial collapse that consumed Evander Holyfield explains why he kept fighting when his body was telling him to stop. The centerpiece of Holyfield's wealth had been his 109-room, 54,000-square-foot mansion in Fayette County, Georgia. The property sat on 235 acres and included 17 bathrooms, a bowling alley, and a 135-acre lake. He purchased it in 1994 for $10 million. Annual upkeep costs reportedly exceeded $1 million just for utilities, landscaping, and staff. Then there were the children. Holyfield fathered 11 children with at least 6 different women over the course of his adult life.
You have 11 kids with 6 different women.
Mm-hmm.
Every kid, their name starts with an E.
Right.
But you have 2 sons named Elijah.
The logistics of supporting multiple households drained his resources. Court records and media reports estimated his annual family-related expenses, covering support payments, private schooling, housing allowances, and extracurriculars, at over $1 million during peak years. In 2012, Toy Irvin, the mother of one of his daughters, filed a contempt motion in Utah's 3rd District Court, claiming Holyfield owed approximately $372,000 in back child support. A Utah judge issued a bench warrant for his arrest after he failed to appear at a hearing. The warrant carried the potential for jail time until Holyfield complied or negotiated a resolution. Bad investments accelerated the collapse. Holyfield invested in ventures that failed, including a record label called Real Deal Records that lost millions. Real estate deals went sour. He delegated finances to managers and associates who made unwise decisions or outright exploited him. When asked about people stealing from him, Holyfield responded with characteristic calm.
Well, the thing is that these are things that people do, and just sometimes you catch them, sometimes you don't. But the most important thing is that, for you to tell your kids never be that way. You don't want to do that because you know what kind of pain it brings you, and eventually a person get hurt who's stealing stuff from somebody, and all of a sudden you're gonna be in a difficult situation.
Yeah.
Then you're gonna be trying to come back to the person who they know got money.
In 2008, Holyfield defaulted on a $14 million construction loan for the mansion. Washington Mutual initiated foreclosure proceedings. The property was auctioned on the courthouse steps for $7.5 million, far below its value. Holyfield fought legally to retain it, but ultimately lost possession in 2012. On June 22, 2012, Holyfield filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in the U.S. Bankruptcy Court in Atlanta, listing assets of approximately $14.4 million against liabilities of $19.9 million. As part of the proceedings, personal items were auctioned to satisfy debts. Over 400 lots sold for more than $500,000, including his 1984 Olympic bronze medal, championship belts, gloves from the Tyson fights, and furniture from the mansion. The financial pressure created incentives to keep fighting long past the point of safety. By his late 40s, Holyfield's monthly income had dwindled to around $20,000 from royalties and appearances, insufficient for his obligations. The only way to generate significant income was to step back into the ring. There was another dimension to Holyfield's financial collapse that rarely gets discussed. Reports emerged that he had donated millions. Estimates ranged from $3.5 million to over $20 million to televangelist Creflo Dollar's Prosperity Gospel Ministry. These donations continued even during periods of personal financial strain. In 2010, Holyfield's then-wife Candy filed for a temporary protective order after an argument that allegedly began over whether she had been tithing to their church. She claimed the dispute escalated into physical violence, with Holyfield allegedly striking her multiple times. Charges were not pursued, and the protective order was later dismissed. The intersection of faith, family, and finance created a perfect storm that depleted Holyfield's fortune. He believed God had healed his heart. He trusted associates who exploited that trust. He fathered 11 children and tried to provide for all of them. He gave generously to his church, and when the money ran out, he did the only thing he knew how to do. He fought. By 2021, at age 58, Holyfield was still chasing paydays. The $5 million he reportedly earned for the Belfort exhibition represented more than his diminished earning power could generate in years of appearances and endorsements. The price was his dignity and potentially his long-term health. The financial ruin that drove Holyfield back into the ring is the final piece of the puzzle that boxing legends point to. The choices he made, the damage he absorbed, the financial pressures he succumbed to have all combined to create a trajectory that can only end one way. He earned $250 million and lost it all. He was diagnosed with a heart condition and ignored it. He absorbed enough punishment to show early signs of brain damage and kept fighting anyway. He fathered 11 children and created financial obligations he could not meet without risking his life. Evander Holyfield became the only 4-time heavyweight champion in history. He beat Mike Tyson twice. He survived wars with George Foreman and Riddick Bowe. He claimed God healed his heart. And now, in his 60s, he lives with the accumulated consequences of every decision he made along the way. The boxing legends who faced him in the ring understand what those consequences mean. They took the same punches. They felt the same damage. Some of them walked away before it was too late. Holyfield never did. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.